What's up, people? Welcome to 2026. You're tuned in to Rewinders. New year, new channel. And on this episode, we're gonna rewind Super Mario Galaxy. Why would I rewind one of Nintendo's most popular games? That makes less sense than what I was gonna say. Okay, Super Mario Galaxy for girls. That's sexist. It's representation. Does that imply logically then that Mario represents all men? Perhaps, because deep down I too would parkour through space to get some of Peach's cake. Okay. Exactly. That means we're doing Super Mario for girls, and you gotta take all that dumb shit off and change your channel back because nobody wants that or this or anything that's going on. So, let's rewind the actual rewind channel, shall we?
Can I keep the glass?
No, stop it. Get out of here.
I don't know. Okay.
The year for this one is 2012, and quite frankly, when I was looking this up, it felt like a blur. It didn't seem like the right year for any of these, but apparently 2012 was just an incredible year across all media. So, on the radio, if you went anywhere, you could not escape Starships by Nicki Minaj, Payphone by Maroon 5, We Are Young by Fun, but of course, all of that being overshadowed by a small song called... And honestly, movies that were coming out were no different either. We had a new Men in Black, we had The Lorax, we had a new Twilight, we had a new James Bond, we had Ted, but all of those were overshadowed by small movies like The Dark Knight Rises and Marvel's The Avengers. Marvel's The Avengers, of course, being the first Avenger-style crossover, technically. So when I read all that, I thought, cool, that kind of sets the tone. Everyone has at least some memory with some of these. I don't need to go over competing games of the year. Oh, but I do, because we get Mass Effect 3, Halo 4, Borderlands 2, Diablo 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Whatever was going on in 2012, like, we got to go back to that. We nailed it. That's culture. We had it. Everything before is a prequel, and probably everything after is worse. I'm just going to stay there. This is what I believe in now. 2012 supremacy. Oh yeah, side shout out to Darksiders 2 and Assassin's Creed 3. Basically every franchise that showed up with roughly their best version. Assassin's Creed 3 is okay. It's certainly better than the other ones. So obviously with all that going on, you're going to have a lot to do. You've got great games at home. You've got incredible movies to go see. You have to go to your friend's house to convince them that Call Me Maybe is actually a banger and they just don't appreciate art. Then the question becomes, what do you do in between all these top tier activities? Well, you check out Gravity Rush on the new PS Vita. I guess. At least I assume that's what you do in 2012, because I purposely never had a Vita, and I still don't. I thought they were dumb because I was under some impression that they were a digital-only system, which I think is gross. It wasn't until researching this video that I found out that's totally not true, and the PS Vita absolutely has physical media, and I'm a huge idiot. The more you know. That tangent's only vaguely important because I do not have a copy of the PS Vita version because I, up until a couple minutes ago, didn't like the PS Vita. But when I found out that there was a remaster on the PS4 in 2016, I immediately jumped on that. Immediately being 9 years later, but that is the copy that we are going to rewind today. So if there are some discrepancies, or if the 2012 version is a little more unpolished, I really wouldn't know outside of like a Wikipedia article. Gravity Rush was initially concepted as a PS3 game and then later moved over to the PS Vita during development. Sony thought that it was a really good showcase for the new system, using the Gravity Rush's kind of cartoony, very bright colored comic book aesthetic to showcase the bright OLED screen of the Vita, and also the entire gameplay mechanic of Gravity Rush became super reliant on the Vita's gyroscope. So not only was it a solid enough first-party launch title, it absolutely functioned as probably the best tech demo for the system that they had. Gravity Rush being a first-party game of Sony is also super important because they did some incredible work with the main character, Cat. Sony is the absolute president of inventing really cool, interesting mascots and then throwing them away and completely pretending that they don't have any mascots and they don't know what you're talking about. Even in critical reviews of the game, critics would give Kat praise for her unique design, for her upbeat personality. It was a thinly veiled superhero story with a likable, relatable female protagonist. And in subsequent Sony titles, Kat shows up as either herself or a reference in things like Little Big Planet, Sackbot, and PlayStation All-Stars. I feel like Kat is in such a special position at Sony because she's a well-designed, well-developed female protagonist that's highly marketable and fairly recognizable from an basically unrecognizable game. You almost kind of have a blank slate with that. You could do so much, and in classic Sony, they have chosen to do nothing. Gravity Rush will forever only be discoverable through Rule 30 fan art. I do have a criticism about the game that sounds kind of weird, but at the same time is a compliment. The worst part about Gravity Rush is the game that it should have been. Because the storyline revolves around Kat waking up with amnesia, and it's just a quest to find out who you are and what's going on and what the heck is all this. She finds out that through the help of a magic familiar cat that she can control gravity. And from there, it's a series of fairly intuitive, go here, solve this problem, enemies appear, you fight them. It had every making of like a very basic platformer, just something you'd see a million of on the shelf at a GameStop, and that's fair. But then, when you actually experience the gravity powers, the way that the game controls and the way that the game presents itself completely flips all that on its head, which I guess is the irony of a gravity power. When you think of having a gravity power, you might think of it as like kind of a superhero thing, but with Kat's basic lack of knowledge of anything going on with her currently, she kind of solves problems by just like flinging herself places and flinging other things other places. Look at all these powers. I'm going to go over there. Which is pretty disorienting and weird the first couple times you see it, even as a player. And like the people, the NPCs in the world don't really react super good to you and your powers because apparently there have been other people like you. And you're kind of like, what the heck, man? Like I'm the main character. I'm the good guy. Until you start using your powers and you realize what little control over it you have and you start flinging NPCs into walls and just killing whole families of people. There's not really any consequence for that because it's not like the point of the game, but like on a meta level, you recognize pretty quick the danger of controlling gravity. Anybody that looks at you funny, you just wrap them up in your gay bubble and fling them to space. That's the move. You got a bad guy? Gay bubble to space. That dog barking too loud? Gay bubble to space. I'm the new sheriff in town. I think another big credit that the game really deserves is the actual physical world building in the game. Especially for a handheld PS Vita game, I can see it being a lot more limited, but you need the world open enough to really explore what it means to control gravity and have it shift your perspective. Because the game focuses on puzzle solving and exploration more so than just a rampant power fantasy. You're not necessarily taking enemies and, throwing them all over and like acting like Magneto, but what you are doing is having these almost floating island of cities and making every surface the ground for you. So some puzzles may only make sense once you're standing underneath of the ground with a different perspective. Or in certain sections, what look to be just disconnected, disjointed buildings immediately become an obvious pathway as soon as you're standing sideways on one of the buildings and can see the roofs for what they are. Truthfully, one of the best parts of the game is controlling the game. And you never hear about that. How often have you had a conversation where you're like, oh, what's your favorite part of the game? And you're like, dude, the controller. It feels so good. Like, once you really wrap your brain around the different perspectives and shifting gravity, you're in it. You're a cat. You're having a blast. That's one of the reasons that I don't have a video in December, because I wanted more time to play Gravity Rush, because I wasn't really solving problems. I was just kind of floating around doing stuff. Having those vaguely disjointed floating islands becomes a lot more fun when you have an obstacle or an objective that's like 300 or 400 meters away and the character's like, oh, how we're going to get there? And you're like, And you just shift gravity and float there. Now 400 meters to the left is 400 meters down for you, which is a straight fall. There's also a bit of combat with these like shadow creatures, and they have certain weak points, so you have to be able to kind of float around them to be able to hit the weak points and target them. Even that's a lot of fun, because then, of course, you can do the fight and get through it normally or whatever, or you can start hamming it up and going into basically the stratosphere and eyeballing your target and then dive bombing them like a total psycho. The correct playthrough. But the question for this rewind, like it has been and like it always will be, is Gravity Rush worth your time? Let's talk about it. First off, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Gravity Rush for the PS Vita is not worth your time, truthfully, just because trying to do all that on the handheld seems terrible. It's probably fun and unique, so if that's the experience you're looking for, then go ahead. I didn't get to do it, so I have no idea. Recommending Gravity Rush Remastered on the PS4 breaks us into two groups. If you are looking for a fun, unique experience that is controlled and handles differently than most of the games that I've personally played, Gravity Rush is an easy recommend. Immediately go out and buy it. I have no idea how much it is or how much you can find it for, but it's worth it and it's a good time. To people who would define themselves as someone who likes standard, typical games. Now, I'm not going to define you because I don't even know what that means really, but I've met people who turn off the rumble feature on their controllers because it's too wacky. So if you're one of those people, you will hate this game. In things that like you'd look for in a standard game in terms of like difficulty and progression and stuff like that, there's not a lot, and it kind of falls short in that, but I think that's okay because that's not really the point of the game. You're not doing it just to level up and feel proud of yourself. You're doing it for a fun experience, and if you keep that in mind, I could recommend Gravity Rush to everyone, really. I do kind of want to take a free second just to take a shot at Sony, because Gravity Rush has such an interesting, unique mechanic, and the difficulty of the levels are completely up to the actual physical construction of the world and how complex you need to use gravity for. You could have Gravity Rush games that target younger gamers. You could have Gravity Rush games that target older gamers. You have a unique, interesting protagonist with a unique, interesting power set that has even been praised by people who were critical of the game otherwise. I really think that with a little bit of love and attention, Cat could have grown to be a dedicated Sony mascot that was highly recognizable and have Gravity Rush games that went out and rivaled Mario Galaxy or even stood toe-to-toe with Astrobot just in terms of the enjoyment and the experience that you're having with them. Nobody plays Mario games or Astrobot games because they're super hardcore veteran Call of Duty players that are looking for the next challenge. You do kind of know what you're getting when you buy certain games, and I feel like it falls in that category. But if you are looking for a fun experience, it nails it. I don't know why they stopped making them. This is going to lead me to play Gravity Rush 2 because maybe she dies or something. Like, I literally don't know, but that would be real stupid. That's all I'm going to say. If you just kill off a solid mascot like that. I mean, shit, they even brought Kratos back just to be an old grumpy dad. So clearly, we have some artistic liberty here. If you made it till the end of the video, thank you. And thank you for always getting your rewinds from the Rewinder library. If you have any feedback or you don't like what I said and you don't like my opinions, let me know down in the comments. I want to hear from you. Thank you.